Okay, I'm sorry about that. It's living here with the stupid copper wire and waiting for them to take me on as a client with the only other company that services around here. I may have to look into seeing about satellite because this is freaking ridiculous. Okay, I'm Suzanne Tickamire again. Getting ready to read more of this crazy document. There's no way I can go through it all in one sitting, so I'm going to break off at some point doing that. But we were not near break off point yet. This thing is bizarre. It's rumored to be the Duggar courtship questionnaire. May well be. Like I said, I know of a lot of families that have those things, and I've read through a number of them and posted them at NLQ in the past. They are just all inappropriate. They ask so many inappropriate questions. They're really none of their business whatsoever. You're not supposed to be able to. No, it's not that you're not supposed to be able to. Normal, sane, reasonable adults don't ask these kind of questions to people that show up to court their daughter, to go out with their daughters or their sons. They just know better. But that's one thing I can tell you about Quiverful. It's very true. Boundaries do not exist. They trample the few that there are, and they act like boundaries are a bad thing. They will drag you for having boundaries. They'll make fun of you. They'll trample them. And if nothing indicates this more than this stupid survey. Okay, I was back about family devotions. Did your family have devotions together? Who initiated the family devotions, your dad or your mom? The reason that they would ask that is they're going to say, if you're in a family where your mother initiates everything, then your mother is a controlling, grasping woman who is not going to line up with God's will, not to be the sweet, submissive, kind Michelle Duggar alike. This is one reason why I can't speak in a higher, lighter voice like my voice teacher wants me to do. Well, my occupational therapist, because when I speak like this in a higher and lighter voice, I sound false to me. I'm used to this. Small Town Jewel. The first one, I started having internet problems. So that's what happened. That's exactly what happened. I was just talking about, I picked up again where I left off, which was them wanting to know if your mother or your father controlled family devotions. That was right after they demanded to know how long you prayed and how often and all that. How often do you have family devotions? What is your father's foundation? Excuse me, I can't read today. Your faith foundation. So they want to make sure that you're the right kind of Protestant. Their kind of Protestant that lines up with their exact theology. My understanding is a whole pile of young men have approached the Duggars to court the daughters and have been kicked to the curb. I have a feeling that this document is what they have used to determine who is and isn't worthy. Okay. Why do you believe what you believe? Can you give me some examples? And then we move to relationships. Describe your relationship with your father. Is it honoring? Is it obedient? Does your father have any medical or mental problem that could affect you or your children? Describe your relationship with your mother. Is it honoring? Is it obedient? Does your mother have any medical or mental problems that could affect you or your children? Okay, so they're fishing for confidential medical information here that they can use against you by assuming that, hey, B, assuming that if, say, your mother is a type 2 diabetic, that you'll be a type 2 diabetic. The same thing with mental disorders. And you got to understand, too, that this is a religion that thinks that mental disorders are from the devil, that don't really exist. Mental disorders in that type of fundamentalism are strictly caused by not enough faith, fooling with the devil, a whole bunch of things that they aren't caused by. They're never medical conditions. They're never inherited. They're always the devil. Good morning, Trey. Okay. How many siblings do you have? What are their names, ages, likes, dislikes, cities of residence? Can you describe your relationship with each of your siblings? Can you describe your relationship with your grandparents? Can you describe your relationship with your friends? Have you ever been peer dependent? How did you resist this? Are you consistently faithful in fulfilling your commandments? Give examples. Do you show a regular willingness to serve others? In which ways? In which ways is self-centeredness expressed in your life? Uh-oh, we're getting into some deep dirt now. They want to know about your friends, your relationships with your friends, your relationships with all of your family members. Now they want to know your greatest failings. They want to know how self-centered you are. And here's the thing that they don't get. Fundamentalism is quite self-centered. It is a religion where you get to feel holy and special and better than everybody else. I like to think of Weird Al's Amish Paradise video where he says, I know that I'm 1,000 times more humble than thou art. Have seen that so much in the past in my religious communities. It's always a turnoff to me. It was then. It should have been a run, but something to tell me to run. Animals are my vice. They're one of my vices too. Why else would I be feeding all the stray cats in the neighborhood? They know us too well at PriceSmart. We get the giant bags of cat food. And I'm starting to see other little critters eating that food that aren't cats. But that's okay. They're still fun to watch. Yeah, I am just like flabbergasted at this stupid thing. Okay. How do you relate to authority in your life? If so, what adjectives would your employers use to describe you? Have you ever been a supervisor? If so, what adjectives would your employees describe you? Are you ever manipulative of others? What kinds of situations cause you frustration and how do you respond? What circumstances might make you impatient or angry? How do you handle anger? Have you ever been violent? Do you raise your voice when angry? This one's actually a very important one. I don't know that anybody would ever honestly answer that question if they were violent, but sniffing out violence in a potential mate is something that is just very, 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 very important. One of the things that scares me about the men in Quiverful is a lot of them do tend to have a lot of anger and not much. There's not much grace, forgiveness, humility, or kindness towards their wives or children. When nobody's looking, it can get really bad. I mean, why else do you think women like Debbie Pearl write their books and say, smile and try to win him without a word so he won't beat you? And that's the subtext in a lot of her books, in a lot of the writings of Laurie Alexander. Many of these women, they are talking about how do you keep him from being violent? How do you keep him pleased and happy? What makes you no better than a member of a harem in the Middle East, except that maybe those women get treated a little bit better. Maybe they don't get beaten. I don't know. Dropping caps all over. Okay. I can't handle seeing hungry babies, hairy babies. Oh, you're right. I feed them all too. That's one thing I do. And if you look at it, when I was part of the Quiverful movement, they did not believe in doing that. So many of them said and did such horrible things to their animals that I just couldn't believe it. I had a friend whose dog really needed to be put down. She was having seizures and all sorts of things and all kinds of old age things. She couldn't control her bowels, and I could not convince my friend to put the dog down. Nobody likes to put an animal down, especially if you really love the animal. But it's a kindness if you can see the animals dying, and this just keeps going on and on and on and on. And I said, no, no, no. God gives life. God takes life away. So you're going to tell me that your belief in that is stronger than wanting to ease the suffering of a living being? It was always a rough one for me when people would do that, because I would start fighting with them and they say, oh, well, you worship animals. No, I don't. I just believe in being kind. Okay, we've gotten past the manipulation. Have you ever been manipulative of others? Situations that cause you frustration, all of that. Have you ever had to deal with a broken relationship? If so, provide the details of. What do you expect your relationship with the family of your spouse to be? What do you expect your spouse's relationship with your family to be? Who are your friends? Identify at least 3 of them in detail. How do you get to know them? Oh, how did you get to know them? Why are they your friends? What do you like most about them? What will your relationship with them after marriage be? Okay, I just have to stop here. Your relationship after marriage should be the same. If they are friends, maybe you won't hang out with them as often, but it is really not going to affect your relationship if you're married, if you have a lot of friends. It just isn't. Maybe you hang out a little less, but who scores the test? Jim Bob. That chick, you were right. Yes, almost all of those self-help books are written by women who've had very horrible marriages. Stockholm syndrome, they're advising everybody else to have a marriage as bad as their marriage. And you know about how well that works. When you start looking at the statistics, you see that there's a higher divorce rate there than there is in just about any other. What is Pork doing outside? I'm sorry, she just walked past my window like, you're outside. Okay, let me go back. What type of relationship do you want your spouse to have with your friends? Well, I'd hope that the spouse would at least be nominally friendly to them, because it's not something that I think that you should be fighting over. My husband has friends that I'm friendly with, but I'm not really friends with, and that's okay. We're all happy with that. Marital rules. Oh my goodness. Here we go. Why do you feel that like blank is the one for you? That's a fair question. Are there any verses that helped you confirm the decision? How long did you pray about this? What counselors did you ask about it? Were there any hesitations? If so, what were they? Did you think, do you think we're compatible, and why? Do you think of us as a team? Do you think of me as the wife behind you, leading you, or beside you? Those are broken into 3 questions, and I'm just like, doh. What did you feel God's will is for our lives together? How do you see God using us as a couple? What do you believe are non-negotiable elements of a Christian, Christ-honoring marriage? After marriage, do you think you are one to express romantic feelings verbally? After marriage, do you think you want to express affection in public? Oh, that one makes me almost cry for these girls. Because why on earth would you marry a man who's not going to express affection or love after marriage? I just recently had my 36th wedding anniversary, and my husband still comes up behind me, gooses me when I'm in the kitchen cooking. We still hold hands. Now we sometimes will fuss, pretend fight too, and have some fun. And but why would you marry somebody that doesn't say I love you and doesn't hold your hand? Or says, well, no, that's all over with after we get married. Everyone needs to have their own individual life with friends, regardless of being married. If the spouse loves and truly cares for you, he, she will want you to enjoy life and have fun on your own. Yeah, you're exactly right. Exactly, small town Jewel. That is exactly how you should do it. And you shouldn't be jealous of your spouse's friends either. I mean, I think that's a really, really, it's a huge one. Complete and total cringe. Yeah, it is. Pushing me into the countertop is total cringe. I still cringe over it, even though I know it's a healthy sign. Where are we? Okay. When there's a dispute in your marriage, religious or otherwise, how should the conflict get resolved? Okay, this is a huge one. A huge, huge, huge one. I don't care if you're religious, not religious, whatever. This is one of those things you need to talk out in detail before you get married. You need to have those hard conversations somewhere between, hey, I think you're hot, and I do, that say things like, I think blah, 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 or this is a non negotiable for me. You just need to have those conversations like, how are we going to resolve these things? Who's in charge? Are we going to be true partners? Will there be no one in charge? What are we going to do when we get to an impasse? We can't solve it. I mean, those are the things that really trip people up, those little things. So they do have to be talked about. And I will give Jim Bob a tiny bit of credit for putting this down for them to actually think about it. But I think this is way too soon in a relationship to even ask that question. What is your understanding of Christian marriage? Why have you chosen me as a potential spouse? What is the role of a husband? What is the role of a wife? If you already subscribe to the concept of courtship, give me your definition of it. Do you tend to be more of a leader or a follower in life? Can you offer any examples? In making decisions, what role does God's word play? What is your attitude towards women? What is their purpose? What is your view of the role of a wife? What are your views on women working outside the home? What are your views concerning divorce and remarriage? Can you tell me your thoughts on how a man should provide for wife and family? Can you tell me your thoughts on how a man should protect his wife and children? Okay, here is a crazy one. How do you feel about guns? he threw that right in there in the middle of all these questions about how do you view marriage and how do you view the opposite sex and all that. He threw a question in about guns. I'm not saying that he can't ask about how you're going to protect his daughter and if you'll use guns. That had to be the most awkward segue yet. Socializing, yes, that's exactly right. You have to have good friendships. It's healthy to need a break from your spouse to hang out with your friends. It just is. It's healthy to get a little bit of a space, and sometimes it makes you appreciate them more. My husband just went away for a week, and it was wonderful and peaceful in some ways. I didn't have to cook. I just ate things that were simple that I didn't have to cook. That was a wonderful thing. The not so wonderful thing, I had to get the trash together. And I missed him. It was just too quiet here. When he was not here tromping around yelling, Suzanne, my computer's messed up. It was just way, way, way too quiet. So I'm going to cut this off here because this is like almost 500 questions of this stupid thing. And I'm only at question 122 with a lot of side questions thrown in. This is all specifically Jim Bob. You are exactly right. This is all Jim Bob. And to me, this is a fascinating look into his mind. I mean, look at these questions he's asking right now about the role of family and women working. You know, he doesn't think women should ever work outside the home, that they should, but it's okay to work alongside your husband if your husband's working, say at the camp or whatever. And he's hearkening back to an old type of working that used to take place before Victorian times, when women routinely worked in the family farm, the family business, or right next to the husband. And he apparently didn't have a problem with that as far as I could see. But he also subscribes to the Victorian model of the white upper class woman sitting around not working. That's his ideal, apparently. And that doesn't work in these times. It just does not. Most families need 2 or more incomes to survive. That's just the reality of the time frame we find ourselves in. He also is throwing shade about divorce and remarriage. He wants somebody that's going to agree to a covenant marriage only, that will agree to never divorce. You know, I have been divorced. It was it was actually the best thing I ever did, because the marriage should never have taken place. It was the first time I actually really fell in love with somebody, that first love. And he was way older than I. He took advantage of me. It was a very brief thing, and I divorced him. And it was the best thing that ever happened, even if I had to walk away with all the debts in the relationship and pay all the debts down. Best thing I ever did. Now, at the same time, divorce should be a last resort. I mean, except for certain circumstances. If you're being physically harmed or abused mentally in any way, shape, or form, you should get the hell out. Pay no attention to anything that Jim Bob Duggar is saying. You should just get out, get out, get out. Don't listen to Lori Alexander. Don't listen to Debbie Pearl. They're pushing a view that tells you to stay and be abused, which we all know how that works out. That is how women end up dead. I mean, for the life of me, I cannot figure out why. Even my fundamentalist, fundegelical, quiverful church, we had a situation very similar to Josh Duggar, except instead of it being CP, it was the Daughters. He was how should I say this to get around YouTube censors? It was the Daughters he was having horizontal fellowship with. The young daughters, the under 18 daughters. So he was snatched up and taken away. Most of the daughters were removed by social services from the family because the wife would not admit that was going on. Eventually, she did come to realize that it had happened. It was real. He went away to jail for 20 years. She started to take the steps she needed to heal and to get her children back. And she did. Our pastor encouraged her to divorce the creep. It was one of the few times I've seen leadership up at the church suggest divorce, but I've seen it a couple of times, sometimes in the worst of physical abuse. When there's a man that's doing that to the children, I've seen it suggested there. And those are actually legitimate reasons why you might divorce someone. So Jim Bob is not only attempting to marry his daughters off, he's attempting to let the son-in-laws know there will be no divorce. It's marriage is forever, forever. I don't care who's beating on who's tuning up who's doing what. You just don't divorce. No, I actually think small. I think that the way the questions are written, that they may be giving them to the girls trying to get married into the family too, because there's a couple of times the questions seem to be pretty interchangeable. But I don't think that Jim Bob is rating the girls' questions as strongly as he is the boys. I have a feeling that this is a document he uses to scare a lot of suitors away. I mean, we've all heard the stories. Jim Bob's even said that they've had a ton of suitors for the girls, and he's had to reject most of them. So what tool would you use to reject somebody that you don't know? What better than a questionnaire, a lengthy questionnaire that asks questions that are really none of his business whatsoever? And like I said, that one section is not necessarily a bad thing, but that is something that I would think would be asked in marriage counseling. When my husband and I got married 36 years ago, one of the things that we did was our church, the Methodist Church, had us go through marriage counseling, just like a couple little sessions. And the nice thing about it is they asked those questions and we had to answer. We had to think about those questions. What are you going to do if you start fighting? How are you going to resolve those things? Those are the things that can take you down. Those are the things that, you get caught in this loop of squabbling over every petty little dumb thing. It can destroy the marriage and not even for decent reasons like somebody cheated, but for dumb little nitpicky reasons. And if you can figure out how to go around those things, Jim can tell you, the day I picked him up from the sitting out there for like 2.5 hours and was just, I had it. He came out and he said, and later said, wow, you were really being bitchy today. And it's like, I have reason. But we have the kind of relationship we could talk like that. Quiverful never leaves room for those conversations. Everybody is assumed to just automatically have their role. They stay in their role. You do what you do. And what in the heck was that? It was something in the tree that just did something crazy. Anyway, they assume that you're going to be in your role in your little role like a robot, and you're going to do your robotic thing, and you're going to react robotically and have the one right answer. But see, here's the thing. We're all humans. We are not robots. Our emotions get in the way. There are times when you get really hurt over the dumbest things. There have been times when I've been really hurt over the dumbest things, but I've had enough to be able to explain why I was being hurt over those things and how it hurt and why and where that hurt came from. And a lot of times it's rooted back in childhood. Duh. But I don't think they have enough self-reflection, self-knowledge to be able to parse those things and say, yeah, you're being jerk today. Why are you being a jerk? You got X, Y, or Z going on. Or what's wrong with you today? Can I help? I don't think there's enough self-reflection or self-knowledge in Quiverful. For all they say, how many times you pray and all that, it's ridiculous. Too much involvement with him, way too much. You were absolutely right, Noelle. Yes, so the 8 questions. It doesn't have to be It doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be more than a meeting or two, but you do have to talk about those things. It's just you don't have to talk about them pre-courtship. And this questionnaire is actually labeled pre-courtship questions. So this is before they could even get. Absolutely, the roles are changing. How you feel about your role changes. So many things change. If there is one constant about life, I can look back after 61 years and say it is that everything changes. Life changes, they move on. It's like I have so many of those darn kids moments when I hear about what people are doing with TikTok, and at the same time sort of amused when the Tide Pods challenge came along. And there goes my internet. So I'm going to have to go. There goes my internet. Yes, we're in our rainy season where our internet and our electricity don't work. The more things change, yeah, and the more things change, the more they stay the same. You guys have a good day. I'm going to continue this tomorrow because these rules are just making me laugh. They're just too crazy. Why on earth would you, um, someone's father questioned me back in the old days before I got married. I would have told him, I would have possibly have flipped him some birds and said, suck it, old man. I am not telling you any of this. Why do you need to know? But then again, I always was kind of feisty. Okay, you guys have an awesome day. I hope your electricity stays. I hope I get some here back decent that doesn't flicker.